You're listening to the world's smartest podcast network.
When I go to Sacramento, I will pump up Sacramento.
Some say the news is fake. Others say it's real. These two don't have the time to check. Instead, Turner Sparks and Michael Ira Kaplan turn to comics stationed around the globe to be their eyewitness reporters so that you can know what's really going on. This is Lost in America.
All right, everybody, welcome to Lost in America, episode 281. My name's Turner Sparks.
And I'm Mikhail Kaplinsky.
Ooh la la. You can find me on the road all over California for the next 2 weeks doing comedy. But the entire fall and winter 2022, winter 2023, go find all my dates at the new and improved turnersparks.com. Also, my new album's coming out September 30th. Pre-order it now on iTunes or specifically do it on iTunes because that's the only one that counts. Don't say like, oh, I listened to it on Spotify. I don't care if you listen to it on Spotify.
I'd rather them not listen than listen on Spotify.
Exactly. I want to go up on the rankings. The only way to move me up in the rankings on the iTunes charts, and I think the Billboard charts, which I made top 10 last time, you have to buy it on iTunes. You could also buy it on Amazon, but let's buy it on iTunes. Let's get everybody to iTunes, and that way we're
You want to go platinum, double platinum, 10 times? How many platinums we going with this?
Well, last time I went to number 2 in America on iTunes. So this time I want to, and top 10. I got to number 9 on Billboard, which is good because you can say top 10.
Yeah.
This time we want to go number 1 across the board. Number 1 on Billboard charts. That would be good.
There you go.
Let's beat NSYNC or whoever the new version of that
You're
is.
Gonna beat Harry Styles this week.
That's the new version of NSYNC. That's your favorite group. Anyway,
that's my favorite
group for Kaplan. Harry Styles, the Harry Styles group. You can find. Oh wait, but if you want or buy my album for me, I just sent yours off to Jan Kaplan. The CD you get it. I'll sign it and send it to you. Go to turnersparks.com for all that. Find Kaplan at Kaplan America on all social media platforms, or if you want to buy real estate in Long Island City, New York, Cap in NYC is the new Instagram.
Yeah.
handle.
Oh no, in the entire 5 boroughs, all of New York City, Long Island City,
True.
Queens, Manhattan, Brooklyn. I'll even go to the Bronx for you. Staten Island for fans.
Can you do Jersey or are you not licensed?
I'm not licensed in New Jersey, but I can recommend somebody and I get a little referral fee. So help me out. I get a little taste, a little cut.
Wait, you can recommend nationwide, right?
Yeah, if you need, not just nationwide, we have branches, Keller Williams, all around the world. So maybe
our guest
even
today is coming in from Berlin. Can you help him get a place to live in Berlin?
I believe I can. I can find. I'll do some research if he needs a place.
Look at that.
I'll find him. I'll interview agents for him. I'll make sure they're, they can.
Well, Wiedersehen.
I'll say auf Wiedersehen. I'll make sure they're up to par, up to my high standards. And
the two words I know in German are Wiedersehen and Tannenbaum.
Ich bin kaputt. I know that too.
Kaputt. Oh yeah.
Kaputt. Yeah.
Speaking of, all right, Kaplan on the podcast today, Mikhail. Well, I call him Mike. Mike Gorbachev died a couple weeks ago.
I thought you were gonna say, yeah, okay. He did. He called him Mike.
And he died at, I believe, 91 years old. He died on August 30th.
Good age.
We're going to go. 91's a pretty good age. We have our Oleg Denisov coming back to the show. He'll be back with us in just a second.
Our man.
Talk about the legacy of Mikhail Gorbachev.
In Russia.
Well, how Russians see him. We kind of, well, for all of our younger listeners, how the West sees him. I think that a lot of people might not know who listen to this show. They might go, who's Mike Gorbachev? We have
a very young audience. You hear that, advertisers?
They don't know. Mike Gorbachev. They're like, who was he? Played power forward for the Denver Nuggets. Who is he?
Second round pick stashed by the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, nobody knows. But I'm super interested to see how the Russians view Mikhail Gorbachev. But Kaplan, before all that, Patreon.com/Lost in America for $5 a month. You get Kaplan and I doing our full throttle comedy podcast live from the bunker. 30-minute episodes. Listen on your way to work. Listen on your way home from work. You'll love it. Everybody loves it. Patreon.com/Lost in America. And do it just to support the show, just so we know you're listening to this show. How about that?
Yeah, do it for us. Don't do it for yourselves, but it is a gift because you're going to have to go back to work now. Everyone's going back to work after Labor Day. It's over. The COVID economy's over. You got to get back to the office. You're going to be miserable all day. Have 30 minutes of laughs on the way in, the way out.
The fun of the last 2 years is over.
The party train's over, but you will
party of
sorry, get out of your pajamas. Pandemic. You got to put your pants back on. Got to get them dry cleaned. But
so start with patreon.com/Lost in America and listen to us now, Kaplan. What is let's talk about Mikhail Gorbachev. Let's just say, what do you know of him? Not his legacy. What do you know of him historically as a person?
Well, I mean, I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Zer, so I know him well. But or Gen Xer. I'm a Gen Xer. But anyway, I know Gorbachev.
You're not Gen Z. Would mean you're like 18. Well, you are a Harry Styles group fan.
This is Harry's house over here. Yeah. So no, I mean, Gorbachev was. What do you mean? What do I know about him? He was in charge when the Cold War ended. He was the guy Reagan said, "Tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev." And in no uncertain terms, he listened. The wall came down. I mean, maybe not because of Gorbachev, but
he's a good listener.
He's a good listener. He saw where the world was going. He had the great mark on his head, which I always wanted to. If I ever shave my head,
with the basics, Kaplan.
Yeah,
because I think you're overestimating our audience.
Yeah, our audience are a bunch of dummies.
He was the president of the USSR. Right,
USSR.
Of Russia.
In the mid '80s, he became the premier of the USSR. Yes,
was he? I don't even actually know if he was for Russia or the entire thing.
No, the Soviet Union. We're off to a great start.
The entire union.
You know the USSR back in the USSR before Putin, there was a whole federation of countries. Yes,
back when Nikolai Volkov was in the WWF. That whole the whole crew.
That's where you get your boy. Where's gonna be a great episode?
So he was it, but he also to us in the West, I think he was like some kind of I know of him as my parents spoke glowingly of him. He was such a good man. But then you start reading about him. And frankly, if you're someone who liked the USSR, you probably weren't the biggest fan.
Well, my understanding of him was always that he was sort of like a centrist. He wanted to keep it. He wanted to keep the band together. He wanted to like change a few things. He was aware that the Soviet Union was going broke, that we were spending all this money on military defense, and they were trying to keep up with us forever, and it wasn't going to work out so well. So
again, you may have just said this, but it's very early in the morning for me where I am in California right now, so I don't know. But let's just to make it clear, he was the premier of the USSR, and then it fell under his watch. Basically, now
the Soviet Union fell under his watch. And then Boris Yeltsin came in, and we had the swinging '90s of no holds barred, drinking vodka, having a good time.
Let's bring in our guest. This guy is coming to us from Berlin. He's been on our podcast many times. You all know him. You all love him. He former resident of Moscow, currently in Berlin, and is now starting the East West Comedy Club in Berlin, Germany. How about that? This guy's been there a couple months. He's already kicking these Germans. It takes them years to start a comedy club. He did it in a few months.
I mean, how about Germans are such hilarious people
Welcome today's guests, our favorite, Oleg Denisov. Welcome to the show, man. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Always fun to be on your show. And sorry because of me, you had to wake up at like 6 a.m. or something.
No, we should say Turner's in California. He's at 7 a.m. for him, and so he's a little groggy.
I'm doing more. This is morning radio.
Morning radio, Turner style.
Yeah. So Kaplan's in New York City, East Coast, so 10 a.m. Oleg.
No, you can appreciate now, the professionalism, all the early morning hosts who are like happy and kind of like really energetic. Yeah,
they're on the air at 6 a.m. and they're like, "Wow, it's 5 past the hour. High traffic on the 101. Wow, I'm gonna be partly cloudy today." Like, how do these guys do it? I don't know. Oleg, tell us about the comedy club first of all. The shows, whatever it is in Berlin.
Well, it's not so much a club yet. It's hopefully it will become a club at some point. Just starting a couple of nights at kind of two really lovely venues, which are kind of really professional venues. And I'm just trying to bring something kind of new, something something like I see what a comedy club should be to Berlin, and just see how it goes, if people appreciate it here, as an organization and as a kind of a type of communicating with the audience. Because it's there's like in general in Berlin and Europe, like the comedy scene is like really on the rise now, like it's the international English speaking comedy scene. So everybody's starting something, and hopefully it will be successful. There's not much to say yet, but you're all welcome. East West Comedy Club, just Google it, you can find it.
So how long have you been there now?
Well, with I had some breaks, but in general, I came here on the 1st of March.
Okay.
And then I had to go back to Russia for like documents reasons. And then I went to Edinburgh Fringe for like almost 3 weeks. Just like last week, I came back. So yeah, I mean, overall about 6 months, but just with some breaks.
6 months in Berlin and with breaks, and it's no problem getting in and out of Russia these days.
Well, I mean, I didn't have any problems, I think like a lot of people were kind of warning me against it, but I wanted to, because I wanted to finish my immigration process like properly, by the book, because a lot of people, for example, the guys who I worked with here, like on TV and stuff, they said like, oh, don't go there. We'll kind of fix up some kind of scheme that you're not supposed to go, and then you kind of apply for some sort of like a humanitarian visa thing. But then I know that these things are extremely unreliable, so I just took the chance and actually went back. So frankly, I think that now Putin and everybody, they have like a bigger fish to fry than comedians in general.
For now,
was that the worry?
Now, yeah.
The worry was specifically because you were a comedian who had been outspoken about certain things.
Yeah. Because I was on German TV for like on a primetime show, talking about. So technically, that.
Well, you've also been on this podcast.
You've been on this podcast.
Yeah.
I know Putin's a listener. He's one of our. He used to be a Patreon.
His credit card. I changed credit card, so we lost him.
Credit card, so we lost him.
We lost him.
He doesn't have the money for you anymore.
Yeah, oil. But promise me you'll be careful and don't stand too close to the windows over there. Okay.
Yeah.
People
I have a really nice view, by the way. It's so funny. I live here on the street which is called Karl Marx Allee, and it used to be called and it used to be called Stalin Allee after the war because it's East Berlin, and it was the part which was completely destroyed, and then they built like the main street of East Berlin in the kind of like in the ideal way, like the Soviet Union like street in Moscow, sort of like, but like in an ideal world. That's what Soviet Union should look like. And I'm living in one of the houses, which are kind of like model Soviet houses.
So it's like little Moscow.
Yeah. But like one street of like the Moscow, which kind of never happened, which is kind of like the ideal model of Moscow. Something
so
like
Marxist backpackers all believe this was what the Soviet Union looked like.
Kind of, yeah.
Isn't every backpacker a Marxist backpacker?
All right. It's redundant. Sorry.
So is that the law? If you're Russian, you have to live in East Germany?
No, it just happened. That's the irony of fate. I don't know. I was supposedly moving forward. Turns out I was moving backwards.
The invisible wall keeps you there.
And all right, I want to get into comedy, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's get into Mikhail Gorbachev. So Kaplan and I, but we knew about him. Like we've always known about him, right? He was seen in the West as this big hero, as far as I understand. Because he came to his senses and ended the Cold War, is kind of how it's told here, by I don't know if he denuclearized. He de-escalated the arms race, right? And he made
pretty much
open elections in 1980. So he came to power in 85. And then, can you tell us about? I guess go ahead, tell us about his history from what you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I was like really confused the first time you actually called him Mike Gorbachev. Is the only time anybody has called him that. Like, this is the most American thing ever.
That's how Turner. That's how they refer to him in the Sparks household.
I call him Mike.
They say, "You see what Mike Gorbachev did today?"
Mike Gorbachev is like a drummer for Weird Al Yankovic or something like this. It's like an extremely funny name.
Very familiar here.
Yeah. But basically, of course, we know the story kind of in essence, but then I think that's the whole kind of point why he's such a polarizing figure, because like depending on where people stand on the Soviet Union and whether or not it was good or bad, like they would tell the story kind of completely differently, like and they would see his role completely differently. But yeah, he did the premier, as you said, or general secretary of the Central Party Committee, basically the head of state of the Soviet Union. And then basically what he did is like he introduced some reforms. And, in retrospect, a lot of people see that those reforms were kind of inevitable. And many of those things were inevitable. For example, that, as you said, like Cold War, which was basically the Soviet Union was losing it, and there was the time for reforms was lost because when the prices of like oil and everything they went down. And so, like, it was like the country was facing severe economic crisis. A lot of money was going to a war, Afghanistan war, which was kind of like just draining the budget a lot and like didn't bring any results. So, he ended the war. He ended the war in Afghanistan, and he introduced some, let's say, freedoms, liberties for people, which would allow them to actually take some of the economic processes in their own hands. And basically form companies, form private companies. The only thing that wasn't private was like they couldn't have private, basically private property in the modern sense, right? So they could have like means of production, but they couldn't have like the land, for example. But in general, like they were allowed to do business basically, and people kind of started doing business. Basically, I think the best parallel in Russian history is like what Lenin did after in the 20s when he was the country was like complete economic ruin, and he introduced like new economic policy. And Lenin said, like, this is like kind of not how I see it going like later, but this is like a necessary thing to do now because otherwise everybody will starve. So I'll just kind of give people freedom to do business, to kind of to run their own lives. And this is kind of like the best sort of like anti-advertising for, socialist method. It's like, this is very correct what we're doing. Yeah, but people are starving. What to do? Let's cancel it for a while,
Hey, starving people, what if you opened a business?
Yeah. I didn't realize Lenin did a little capitalism in his youth. I know.
He did. Yeah. He did. It was a few years, and like the GDP like skyrocketed. Like it went up. Like obviously the economics was started to boom. But then, as promised, basically he kind of closed this period as well. So and then went back to planned economics, right?
So the issue with starting a business, I've started a business in a country that had a similar philosophy of let the people in China. They said, in 80, I guess, in 1980, they started liberalizing the economy a little bit. So people could start, you had the freedom to make money, but kind of, that was the main freedom you were given, was the freedom to start your own business. Same as what you're saying with USSR, which is that you were still not allowed to own land, but you could, the thing they eventually came to was this, and this took 30 years or whatever, but it was the decision that you could own, in China, you could own your apartment for 75 years or something, but you could not own the land.
Like a long-term lease.
The land on it.
Yeah.
So you could own it for basically like the life of a person was the idea. You could own it for that long, but you
can't pass it down.
Sell it to anyone. I mean, you could sell it, but it only lasted that long.
Not a good real estate business with that model.
It wasn't an idea that you
I'm not going
bought
there.
A bunch of them and sold them. That happened anyway. Was it a similar idea?
Well, it was a similar idea, and actually, a lot of people now who are kind of like who are let's say like disapprove what Gorbachev did, like they kind of, mostly back in Russia, right? They say like they like to compare what he did with what Deng Xiaoping did in China. So basically, it was a similar process, like the one who made the Chinese economic miracle possible, who kind of built the foundation for the economics, which is like kind of really apart from some stuff, like it has planned elements, but it's really capitalist in terms of kind of like what people can do with their lives. And this is like, so they compare, and he actually, the Deng Xiaoping, he made the country stronger rather than, and Soviet Union collapsed. So kind of they say like that this is kind of a more like a better way of doing it. But it's also, I think, important to remember like one thing about the Soviet Union, the difference between like Chinese government and the Soviet government, because the Chinese elite and Deng Xiaoping himself, he studied, I think it's Switzerland or something like this, and he lived in the West. He lived and kind of he communicated with like people like economists and politicians in the West. So basically, he had the idea of economic how the economic structure should work, how capitalism should work. And also China in general was kind of like, apart from like the Mao years, China was always kind of open to taking or even stealing some technical advances from the from the other places when they actually do stuff better. So it was never a problem for them. So China, I mean, technological isolation was never their goal. And so basically they introduced it kind of with a lot more knowledge involved. And literally, and Gorbachev, as well as everybody who was around him, all of these people, they had no clue what they were doing in terms of like building like elements of capitalism. So that's why the reforms were only partly kind of worked only to some extent, but not really. That was the main problem.
I was surprised to find out during my research that he only came into power in 1985 because he acted quickly. By 1989, he was having open, free elections, right? And he had taken the controls off of the media, so it was also free. His idea was to have free elections and free media. So the newspapers,
to an extent, of course. Yeah, I mean, but in comparison to what was before, his goal was, of course, like his goal, and he expressly said this like later and during the time that his goal was to keep the Soviet Union as it was, but like liberalize it to make economics stronger and just basically to keep the country. Rather than to make it disintegrate. And then he, by his own admission, he kind of failed in this. And, I think it's kind of difficult to kind of analyze what he said afterwards, because he still considered himself like part of the line of the Russian leaders. And for example, even when it was clear that he didn't agree with something, for example, what Putin did, like with the war, for example, he would never kind of openly say like, oh, I'm against Putin with this, I'm against like this guy with this, because he saw himself as part of the tradition, of Russian heads of state. So he kind of didn't see like, he saw it as unethical to speak about it, to directly oppose some other head of state, But he tried to make the country strong. He tried to keep it together. But then, when he was kind of forced to sign the agreement, which basically meant the dissolution of the USSR and creation of the Union of, what's it called?
CIS, like
the Community of International States or something like that, or independent states. I think Community of Independent States. And then there was like a coup. If you remember,
Yeltsin and a few others basically organized a coup.
No, not Yeltsin. It was against Yeltsin. It was the old Soviet, autocrats, basically the ministers of the Soviet government, who actually kind of tried to seize the power in Moscow. So basically Gorbachev was in Crimea or something like this, somewhere in the south, and they kind of
he was on vacation in Crimea.
Yeah.
Great place.
In 1991, I believe. So
and Yeltsin was in Moscow, and so they tried to seize power in Moscow, and then after this didn't work, obviously Yeltsin was very, very popular after this didn't work, because he strongly opposed this, and he said, we don't want this. We don't want this kind of old Soviet style. And so it was kind of what propelled Yeltsin. One of the biggest things propelled Yeltsin to power.
Because Yeltsin wanted to make stronger reforms, right, than even Gorbachev was proposing.
Yeah.
So Yeltsin came along after Gorbachev and wanted even closer ties to the West and all that kind of stuff.
He wanted to go drink it in DC and
Well, he became so Gorbachev was the first and the last president of USSR. And then Yeltsin was the first president of Russia, independent Russia.
Yes. Okay.
The first and the last.
Part of one process. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's a good Bulhar stat.
That's pretty good. The first and the last.
Yeah.
So do you remember this time?
Yeah. Well, it's actually like, I don't remember this time. For some reason, I thought I remember this time because, when I was little, I was growing up in Moscow, and I remember I was on a bus when I was little, and I remember there were tanks in the city. And I remember this, and so I kind of, but actually it was a different event. It was an event in 1993 because there's so many fucking coups in Russia that it's hard to keep track.
Keep track of all the times you've seen tanks in the streets.
yeah. There's too much tanks, so too many tanks. So actually, I don't really remember this time, but I remember the 90s. What happened afterwards, and kind of. It's kind of really easy to understand, why some people, such as Putin, for example, also he never publicly spoke negatively of Gorbachev, but what he said, that his main legacy, of course, is that the Soviet Union collapsed, and Putin said that, this is the biggest catastrophe, geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century.
Yes.
It's really weird, thing to say, because Hitler is am I a joke to you?
It's of the 20th century, not the second half of the 20th century.
I think that's Putin's most famous quote in the West, actually.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it seems to be his driving factor. Yeah.
Is it Gorbachev? That was the biggest failure, or what was the exact quote? Disaster in the 20th century. And even what he's doing today is trying to
make amends,
correct that wrong.
Does he blame Gorbachev? You're saying he doesn't ever blame Gorbachev though publicly?
No, he never. But I mean, this is kind of the tradition which kind of Russian state leaders, they always kind of, I think they keep to this tradition. They never openly criticize the other ones.
It's like America. We're supposed to do. They used to do that.
Yeah.
Before Trump, they used to say ex-presidents would never criticize current.
They would all be
presidents.
best friends afterwards. And then Trump just called everyone an asshole. And then
Trump screwed the whole thing up,
including his own party.
It didn't matter about party before Trump. Yeah.
But basically, his legacy, his main legacy, is seen by most people now, is everything else kind of faded, everything else kind of got forgotten. But the fact that he presided over the dissolution of the Soviet Union is the kind of the main fact that everybody in Russia knows, because also there's the kind of big problem with kind of school history and school education, for example. School universities now is obviously this whole period is kind of seen a little bit differently, of course, because in the 90s, early 2000s, it was seen as mostly positive, of course, because everybody was kind of enjoying the Soviet post-Soviet kind of existence, even though it was difficult. It was a difficult time, but people who actually lived long enough in the Soviet Union, kind of a lot of them actually kind of appreciated what was happening.
They appreciated the end of it because they had to live through it.
Yeah.
And now, if you didn't have to live through it, you might see it differently. So was it taught the way you were taught in school about the fall, about the end of the USSR? Is that different from the way kids today would be taught in school?
Well, yeah, it would be because of the different, not because of the different events, let's say, but because of the different kind of set of values, which kind of the education now is trying to, the emphasis on different things. Yeah, for example, now the emphasis should be there should be a strong state and a strong leader. And Gorbachev, because he did this, that's the difference. In Russia, he's by almost everybody, he's seen as a kind of a weak leader. Which is kind of a bad thing in its own, kind of in its own merit. It's a bad thing,
Because he didn't use force, right, to other states, part of the union, Armenia, Azerbaijan, a bunch of others. He would never send in troops. That was a break with the past.
You mean when they were trying to leave the country?
When they were trying to leave or protests, right?
Yeah. And that was a big fear, I think, in the West and America, that when it was the dissolution started happening, that was the main fear, because it's such a militarist country, a lot of heavy weaponry or nuclear weapons, and the country which before, for example, held on, used the military to keep countries like Hungary and Czech Republic in the eastern orbit when they tried to break out, and so they just sent tanks there, it's by the way, if we speak about this situation which is happening now, just it's kind of the scale of events. I recently kind of found out this fact that what is the quantity of the army that Putin is using, was started using at the beginning of the war in Ukraine. It was about 200,000. And when Soviet Union was sending tanks to Prague, I think in the 60s, it was they sent 500,000 troops
just to Prague to crush a protest
to Prague, and they didn't even they didn't even expect to have an actual conflict.
That wasn't even a war. That was just they were sending a message.
Just to send a message, just to show that they're serious. A completely different scale of military involvement. The level of power. And so it was a huge fear in the West, of course, that it would happen, that he would try to force it. But basically, it was according to the constitution of the USSR that nations have the right for self they didn't say independence, but to decide for themselves.
Self-governance.
Yes.
And that's why I think why Gorbachev is so revered right here, because it wasn't, we all expected it. I mean, not we all, but people back then expected to be bloody if the Soviet Union was going to fall, and it really wasn't. So,
well, I was reading that even to Margaret Thatcher and Reagan, who I guess were in office at the time, and Bush Jr. Bush original Senior.
Bush Senior,
Bush Senior,
not W,
is that they almost didn't believe what they were seeing, which is that he was saying, "Hey, I want to work with you guys," and they were like, "Yeah, right.
What's the trick?
What's the scam?
What's the catch?"
And then it took Margaret Thatcher calling Reagan and original Bush and going, "No, it's real. He really is like a good guy. We really can work with him. We have shared values." I think was the term they all used. We had shared values.
Yeah.
So I want to get into what his ideal state for Russia would have been. But first, we got to take a break, Kaplan. We're part this podcast is flying by right now. We're part of the world's smartest podcast network. It is us, Lost in America. It is the Political Orphanage with Andrew Heaton. I'm going to be on that show pretty soon, promoting my new comedy album.
Then you'll go to number one among libertarians.
I cannot wait.
They have their own charts.
The big libertarians. By the way, some guy who's a listener to Heaton tweeted at me something about my album yesterday on Twitter, and I looked up his Twitter handle, and it's the most Heaton listener Twitter handle of all time. It's a veteran, like U.S. veteran and proud deserter.
That's perfect.
And I'm pretty sure it was real. I was like, this guy's the best. We're also shout
out to him.
The Majoring in Everything podcast with Professor Andrew Heaton,
which you were just on as well, right?
Professor Andrea Jones-Roy. Excuse me. Dr. Andrea Jones-Roy. Gosh, it's too early.
She is a professor too, though. She's both.
And she's both. She's all of that. Heaton's none of it. She's all of it.
Yeah.
And that's all of us. And now, Kaplan, a word from your local sponsor. All right, we're back.
Thank you to the sponsors. That's why we love we love capitalism, not communist podcasting, because we would not have sponsors in a communist podcast world. So,
well, you could. No, you could. You have the freedom to make money, Kaplan.
Oh, yeah. And Gorbachev would have made it for us to have sponsors. That's why I like him.
In China, they call it communism with Chinese characteristics.
Bill Raftery.
The Chinese characteristics are, well, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, there you go.
With money, not with anything else, but with money. So anyway,
man-to-man principles.
So what was it seems like Gorbachev wanted to keep, he always said he wanted to keep socialism, right?
Yeah.
Intact. Was the goal to become something like Sweden or like a Nordic country?
Well, I think the goal, as he was speaking about it himself, like first of all, what he wanted to do is to keep, but basically what he realized that the main source of the whole problem is this kind of double think that is created all the time. Like, it's basically that there are problems which are always kind of muffled because it's kind of you can't speak about it, you can't actually see it, and you can't solve it where at the source of the problem. And one of the ways of actually solving problems like economic and social problems, and at source was the federalization of the country. So basically, what he was trying to do is to make Russia, like Soviet Union, more kind of independent. So the republics would keep as one state, as a confederation. Well, I mean, maybe something pretty much, maybe something like the United States, for example, where kind of like where we would have like a broad autonomy. And ironically, now it's actually the most problematic kind of people who speak about the federalization of Russian Federation, which Russia is still called a federation, even though it doesn't function as a federation completely.
Yeah. What's the federation?
Like a lot of people, when they speak about like Putin suppressing the opposition, they say, the liberal opposition, and so it's being suppressed. It's so horrible. And some people also remember, but also the right nationalists as well are suppressed by Putin. Like the more radical ones. But a lot of people forget that actually the first type of kind of political, independent political thought and opposition that was suppressed and is suppressed like more than all of the others is the Federalists, is the people who actually say, well, actually, for example, there was like a movement in Siberia where they say, well, actually here in Siberia, we actually produce all the stuff that you sell to the West, but we don't get any money. We only get the money that you send us from Moscow, and it's not fair. And these are the people that he started suppressing from like early in his, when he just came to power, like Putin, right?
Did.
So this
Putin
kind of like, yeah, Putin. I'm talking about now. So basically, federalists, federal, this kind of tendencies to federalization are seen now by Putin as very dangerous. And I think that might be one of the reasons for that is because Gorbachev was trying to make a country more of a federation, more of a confederation, actually, of the independent republics, and it kind of dissoluted at the end. So maybe that's why Putin, he tries to keep Russian Federation as little a federation as possible.
Yes.
So Gorbachev, he was trying to make this confederation, and he was trying to basically just kind of solve the problems of the that have been piling up for several decades. As of kind of ideal vision of the country, I don't think we can kind of speculate about that, because again, just because I think that his administration, none of them actually had the kind of the scope of understanding, because none of them were actually had in-depth knowledge of how any of the Western states actually function, would be like Scandinavian or America or anything like that. But this was I think it was a bad thing, because they could have done many things differently, but at the same time, it was clear that they still they were kind of idealists, right? They were kind of idealists. And they kind of adhered to some ideals which were kind of which existed somewhere. For example, to the constitution of the Soviet Union, with the kind of the nation have the right to be independent and whatever. So they kind of adhered to some kind of principles, and this was the good thing about it. Had they been completely sort of cynical and completely consumed by this kind of state. Primate of the state situation, then such as, for example, the committee that tried to make a coup, like these guys, because for them it's like the state, the keeping the powerful state, and they were trying to install a war dictatorship. They were trying to put a general up to
ironically, they didn't care about the Constitution as much as.
Yeah, of course not. So basically, I don't know what kind of state he was trying to do, but he was trying to make it a more free confederation where every region would solve their own problems because it's more effective. And then he saw that people, if they solve their own problems, they are more effective at solving them than the planned economy and the socialist state. So he just kind of tried to make the country more kind of normal, and it's just kind of to get rid of the ineffective system that has been kind of building over generations.
He basically, it sounds like he wanted to run it as like a franchise business, where
franchise communism.
I used to have ice cream trucks, Mr. Softy ice cream trucks. We had some franchisees, and I understand how hard it is to control people like 3 cities away, and how to uniform all the business, but yet give them enough autonomy. It's a delicate balance that I couldn't figure out. So it's not shocking he couldn't either.
basically, it's a big problem because, for example, Putin couldn't run a franchise of ice cream truck, because what he would do, he would have like an ice cream office, and then we have different trucks in sort of all the regions, and then he would say like every truck should send me, I don't know, $500 a month.
Yes.
And then he would get it, and they would send them less money that they need to actually buy new kind of products to make ice cream. And then he's like, "Why aren't you sending me 500?"
And he would poison half of his drivers.
Yeah, I mean,
those falling out of ice cream truck windows isn't as dangerous, though. At least as
yeah. Well, giving freedom. Yeah, that's why giving freedom to regions and giving freedom to people is kind of seen by Putin as a very dangerous thing. But I think it's mostly because of the Gorbachev situation.
But isn't it like the same as with Putin, where almost the price of oil has an outsized influence? Because it seems like that, reading up on it, was such a key part in the Russian economy, the Soviet Union economy that had been hanging on by a thread, just kind of collapsing, right? Was the oil came down in the 80s.
Yeah.
So which is kind of similar to what happened to Putin, right? He had more power, or he had more success when the oil was. So was there any way Gorbachev, I guess what I'm just asking is, could he have done this dream country without oil going up? Was there if he had time, do you think, or he could have, or it just was it was doomed to fail?
I think if he came to power, in theory, let's say, like he or somebody like him came to power like 10 years before in like the 70s, when it was kind of all right.
Oil
and
was flying high,
oil was flying high. There was no war, for example, like if the Soviet Union didn't start the Afghanistan war, and then all the reforms could be done kind of in a more kind of, they had like the safety net, the safety net of money, of the oil money, and so the reforms could actually, but as you know, in history it happens very often that people try to do reforms only when it's too late,
Right. Yeah. I was going to say the timing was off. And going back to the franchise thing, I mean, I was joking, but it is true that to get people to do what you want, you need to be able to offer them something that's greater than what they could do on their own. If you don't have that power at the home base, if the home base is poor and isn't offering Albania something great, then why do they?
Shout out.
What's the point to staying? That feels like that might have been his miscalculation.
Yeah. Because everybody kind of started to realize that maybe they would be better off without the kind of the central this kind of system. There was also the problem of trust, of course, because nobody really trusted the central government. But everybody understood that it's all kind of double think, and the people say one thing on the news, and in reality nothing like this happened. So there was kind of the level of trust even between let's say the governments of the different republics was also kind of not very high. So with a little bit more, let's say, kind of, if the situation hadn't been so bad originally, I think it could be kind of saved as a union. But it was just too late, I guess. That's
and now that so when he died, August 30th, what was the story in the Russian media, Russian newspapers? How did they frame him?
Well, the thing is, recently it's been really difficult to read Russian media for me. I don't really read them that much because it's just like they became completely unpalatable, to me, I think what I notice is that they do definitely kind of, apart from some very, let's say, radical publications, they kind of keep to this tradition of actually not shitting on anybody openly, of just saying, well, he did a lot of things which basically the idea is that he meant well, but it didn't work. And kind of the subtext is that, he's a weak kind of like a weaker leader. And if they write about what he could have done differently, he should have used kind of more force and more power, kind of maybe even military power to keep this together. No, maybe you saw this on the news or somewhere that because Putin, he usually kind of he can't actually be present with large gatherings of people, and so he kind of he did a separate kind of farewell to Gorbachev.
He had his own funeral,
kind of alone.
Personal.
Personally, just for him.
He's very scared of COVID, so he stays and does his own personal. Gotta respect that.
Yeah, so he's basically he's scared
Double
that
masked.
even dead people can get in COVID.
Wow. Yeah. Was
So
the funeral?
what a state Putin's gotten himself to. We don't have to get too far into this because it's a whole other podcast. But the fact that he can't even show up, like he doesn't trust anyone, right?
Yeah,
That's how you don't get assassinated. You don't go anywhere.
yeah.
I know,
maybe
but
you
You don't get COVID if you don't go anywhere. To tie it back to that,
I know, but what's the point of all this if you literally can't enjoy any of it? You know, you have all this power.
He has a
you can't
stripper
enjoy-
pole in his apartment, in his house. I saw.
Yeah.
So he's got.
Well,
he's- he brings entertainment in. He
He
doesn't
trusts
leave.
the strippers.
That's all right. Yeah. But maybe you saw the footage as well. It's like I think like some of his advisors probably just said, "Oh, we need to present like an image of a strong leader, and so we need to kind of actually to speak to the people." And he was like in a Russian town, I think in Kaliningrad, and he was like the news story was like Putin gets out of his limousine to speak to the people, and then so you can find it like on YouTube or something later. And then basically it looks like this: there's like a street, there's like a people, there's a fence, people behind the fence, and then one car pulls up here, then the other car pulls up here, and there's a lot of security guys here, and Putin gets out of this farther car. From the farther side of the car, literally does this. Hello, how are you doing? Goodbye. And he's going into the car.
Hi, people. I'm speaking to you.
This is extremely this is the image of a strong leader. Like this is just what we
He
need.
doesn't do big rallies like Trump or anything. He just it's a far
No,
cry.
not really.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
How's life in general for you in Germany? To switch gears here for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. You know, a lot of people in Russia, for example, and, you know, because in Russia, there's a lot of stories like on the news and stuff that are about how, you know, like Russian people are being kind of discriminated against in, you know, the Western countries. So basically, yes, to scare people from actually going somewhere, and just in general, kind of like it's not just that you're a traitor, but also you treated badly there, you know, if you left the country.
But
So
you're not
that's the
having that
story.
experience.
No, not really. I mean, like the people are usually very nice, and kind of in general, I don't see any problems. There were like initially there was a lot of problems. I'm just kind of just reflecting on it more, because now I have time to reflect about it, because I just got my residency card, which is like a 3-year residency.
Whoa,
in Germany.
Congrats. 3 years you
Yeah,
got. There you go.
Yeah,
Probably
Talking
just
to a real German.
real German.
over here.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, and I kind of noticed that, you know, like I kind of reflect back on this period. I realized how difficult it all was, because like I didn't have like the access to my money, for example, to my bank card. My bank cards didn't work here. Nothing worked. Like the flights were kind of super inconvenient, super expensive through like different countries and whatever. And it was actually a pretty difficult process, I think. But it's kind of Russia. I think from Russia coming to Germany is also not a very popular destination, because, you know, like the two most popular destinations to go from Russia is like Turkey and Israel, which makes complete sense for people trying to get away from dictatorship and war. You know, it's very,
You got a lot of Russian
strange.
Jews. They're leaving.
Yeah.
Soviet Jewry.
Yeah.
Still coming.
And I noticed that, you know, like I can actually compare myself, you know, and other people who made it, for example, to Europe this way, compare like these people to actual like immigrants of like a proper immigrants, like 100 years ago sort of immigrants.
Yeah.
Or like kind of, you know, would put like everything they had like in suitcases and kind of go to, you know, in a long journey somewhere, and kind of, which is
You're like Ellis Island.
difficult.
They should change your name.
difficult
You
to
should be
understand. Yeah.
Oleg
They should
Denisov.
cut it. They should make it Germanized. Yeah.
Dennis.
yeah. And I think like really some things in the West, like in Europe, for example, are kind of devalued. Here in Berlin, for example, people say, "Oh, I'm an immigrant." "Oh, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Romania," or something. Like Romania, as in like a member of the European Union, Romania. This Romania. So what was
you
what was the
immigrated that person.
difficulty? Like, what was the difficulty? You had to wake up at 5 a.m. to get a Wizz Air flight. Like, what's the?
Oh, this is good. Are you doing this on stage? This is great material.
No, I'm just thinking about it. I'll do something about it on stage.
I mean, yeah.
but
Well,
just-
is it the same? Because here in the U.S., if you being an immigrant is something it used to be like shame. I don't know if shameful is the word, but
No, now it's a huge woke cred or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a credit. It's like you're proud of it, and it helps
people whose parents were immigrants now say they're immigrants just to get the credit.
Well, this idea, people say I'm first generation, which for the longest time I thought that meant you were from the country. I recently found out that just means your parents are from another country. But they're like, I'm first generation this, so life's been tough.
So first generation American, that means that
they're American, but their parents were born in another country. So they're trying to trick you.
So my
wife
is you're zero generation.
I'm zero generation.
If anyone asks you, you're not first generation. You're zero.
No.
Yeah.
But they'll say you're from Russia, because I don't know if you saw in the U.S. Open here, the tennis tournament, when the Russian players play, they don't show their country. Like they show every other country. They just won't show the name.
Yeah.
So at first I was confused. I was like, is that a man without a country? Like a person or true international? Then I'm like, oh wait, that's a Russian.
A Tom Hanks from the terminal.
Yes, exactly. Like a real globalist. I don't believe in countries. I don't want a country listed. Like
Tom Hanks from the terminal.
Yeah. So then I realized that, and the Russians are doing great this year. So there's a bunch of Russians that were far in the tournament. You see all the blank names. It's pretty easy to figure out, but you don't feel the need to do that. And they're not saying on the night club. They just say, they don't say where you're from, or they just.
Well, no. I mean, they say it, and like the thing about kind of doing comedy, for example, from the perspective of a Russian, it's kind of. I mean, the way that I figured out is that you just address this whole thing like in the first 2 minutes of your performance.
Get out of the way.
Just kind of explain. Just have this opening bit, like a couple of like jokes about it, and kind of like the explanation. And mostly it works really well. It happened only once. There was some problem was in Edinburgh. It was like almost 5 months I've been doing comedy. I mean, here in the West, and there was only once that some person actually. Kind of was displeased with the fact that the Russian was even performing. So it's not because of what I said, because my set is like very sort of, it's sort of PC. So there's nothing, nothing to suspect.
You're not like a pro Putin guy. Like you're
you were going up there doing the missiles. If you put the missiles in Mexico, no,
you could come you could come to Brooklyn, and I could get you on some shows where initially they would love you because you're Russian. But then when you started talking, they might kick you out because they would say, I'm first generation and you're. Well, yeah. So basically, if you have kids in Germany, your kids will in 30 years from now will be saying life was hard for me because I'm first generation, that's.
Yeah. But I think in Germany and in general in Europe, it's like actually the word immigrant means something different than in America. It's like in America is like the kind of the land of immigrants, let's say this, and kind of Europe.
Right.
In Europe is like just constant kind of people passing from one country to the other and to the and kind of it's the melting pot rather than the.
I mean, Germany's never always quite been a melting pot, but nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, now of course, now they're trying to make up for this bullshit.
Yeah, now it's a whole passing through.
But in general, Germans are. I really find some interesting kind of things here. Like just even when I just try to do small talk, it's just kind of. And I asked this guy who I worked with on TV, and I was like, so how do you say in German? Like it's nice to meet you, because we always say nice to meet you and nice to meet you. How do you say that in German? And he thought about it for a moment, and he said, well, you don't.
This is not part of the German lexicon.
It's never nice. We don't have that word.
It's never nice to meet people.
Say hello. Yeah.
We don't have the words. That's crazy.
One of George Bush's famous quotes when he was talking about how Americans are like so their ingenuity with business.
And he made a board.
He's like, I went to Germany. I know. He goes, I went to France. France. Did you know France doesn't even have a word for entrepreneur? It's like a super famous. That was a good Bush quote. I feel like this is the same. Like the Germans don't even have a word for "nice to meet you."
Yeah,
they don't have this expression. They don't say it. Yeah,
I mean, it would be a good game show. Like, who's less interested in small talk, a Russian or a German?
It seems like Russians are interested in small talk.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to ask you, what's the Russians that you speak to? What do they think of the whole Brittany Griner situation? The American basketball player who's.
Can I predict his answer?
Yeah.
My answer is he's going to say, "Who is that?"
Is that your answer?
No. I mean, I know it is, but the official position is it's obvious, yeah. In general, I think Russian people who are actually interested in the political situation, they see it as much of a minor accident that it actually is. So I don't think it's a big story. It's not a big story in Russia. It's just kind of happened. But I think it's kind of clear that they're trying to use it as like leverage for maybe just to exchange some her for somebody. But also it's a very strict thing about kind of drugs in Russia, same as in China. Like in China,
they're very tough on it. Yeah.
I think that could easily happen in China, for example.
Oh, easily. That would happen in China.
That would happen. So
Turner never brought his hash oil to China.
I have a different perspective on all this than a lot of Americans do. I think because I lived in China, I've been to Thailand, I've been to all these places where you just know you don't bring anything with you, no matter what.
Yeah. You follow the rules because exactly for this reason, especially if you're high profile, even more likely.
This idea where like this wouldn't happen in my country, but you're not in your country. That's like, to me, it's the most American attitude that your laws don't travel with you. Yeah.
It's like respect for cultures here is a value, a liberal value. But then apparently when you're traveling, not obviously it's ridiculous, the sentence and everything. Out of the way, but and obviously she's a pawn, and I would hate to be a pawn. I mean, I would never get. If I got captured, they wouldn't be getting no arms dealer back from me.
There's no headlines.
What would Biden give up to get me back?
I don't think. I don't know. A stick of gum.
But they don't bring hash oil with you. Yeah. What?
I know what would happen. They would make a deal with you, so you become instead of serving 8 years in prison, you would serve for 8 years as an American expert on Russian television. Everybody would kick the shit out of you, just say you're wrong, and you're like,
oh, and I have to take it. I can't.
Oh, you'd be a useful idiot.
I could do that. I could be a stooge. I was just watching this thing on Vice TV here where he was interviewing RT. He was interviewing the main anchor.
Oh, Russia Today, right?
Russia Today, yeah. And she sat down for this interview in English with him, and they got one question in, and then he didn't refer to them as freedom fighters in the Donbass region. He referred to separatists. He's the wrong word. And she just goes, I can't believe you would even use that word, and took off her mic and just walked out. She's like, of course
that you would be doing.
That's what I would do. It'd be so much easier than doing a whole interview with this guy. It'd be great to just storm out. Be like, so it's less work that way. Yeah, I'd be a great stooge. So maybe I should get some hash oil.
It would be great if you just show up. You're literally the Russian government spokesperson for the West. So the Today Show in Katie Couric's interviewing you about Russia's stance on things.
Yeah, and I'll talk about my Russian family.
What about I had another Gorbachev question.
Yeah, let's get back to him.
So what made him different is he came out of office and he wasn't exceedingly wealthy, at least from what I read. Right, he doesn't have 13,000 yachts and houses all over the place. So he did a commercial for Pizza Hut. As a way to make money.
In America?
Whereas I don't think any previous, I don't know if Stalin would have been doing Pizza Hut commercials. How was that seen?
He would do a Georgian food commercials.
Yeah. How was that seen? To us, I think I remember that commercial, somehow seeing it somewhere. And we thought it was great. He humanized him, as they say. He was a really big fan of his.
Course, and Pizza Hut. Yeah.
Pizza Hut. Everyone here loves Pizza Hut.
How
was it seen in Russia?
Yeah, I mean, conservative Russians, it was kind of to people who kind of mourned the Soviet Union. It was kind of adding insult to injury, basically. There is not just he disillusioned the Soviet Union. Now he also kind of sold out to the capitalists and kind of is doing commercials for them. Yeah,
he could have been held out for Papa John's. No,
it's often used as kind of against him. Oh, look at this look at this guy. He's making money. Oh, yeah, sold out to.
It's like when a band goes big, Turner.
But isn't it better than him taking money while in office and then not needing to do the Pizza Hut commercial?
Well, I think, as paradoxical as it might sound, they would have more respect for him.
Yeah, American presidents don't do Pizza Hut commercials when they leave office.
I mean, please, Trump. I'm sure he would.
Trump, Trump would, but Obama's not doing
also there was nothing like, but this is kind of like that's what Soviet Union. I think like I mean like that was the structure of the property in the Soviet Union. So he didn't have any money. Like he actually didn't have it. Like even Stalin would kind of if he was, for example, like exiled from the Soviet Union, like he wouldn't have any money with him. He would do the Georgian food commercial, open a restaurant, whatever. He would like the
money doesn't
like the
travel.
structure of the property. Like all the property that was used by them, it was state owned, and obviously there was no like oligarchs. There was no big private companies that would bribe them or something like this. So like there was nowhere he could get the money from. For example, the same thing happened. For example, my grandfather, he was one of the very kind of like prominent. That's how to say it. Like he worked with power voltage masts, basically building them, like the electricity masts all over the country, like in Siberia and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was one of the top guys doing that. Like he rose from like zero, just a young engineer to like top of the trust. Like a trust is like a company, because actually that's what happened in Siberia, for example. Like that was the form of organization, because the government couldn't really govern those structures. So they basically already, like in the 60s, 70s, they already have this sort of companies which would be run kind of, they were state owned, but they were run as a private company, just because it was the only way to make them effective.
Yeah.
And then after the perestroika started, he formed a company as well, like a proper kind of this company of like the new era company. And then after the Soviet Union collapsed completely, and the currency collapsed as well. Like he was literally had nothing. Like he has like 50 patents and like something like this. He would be a millionaire in every other country.
Yeah.
But all the patents were owned by the government, and he would just get like 200 rubles and the patents.
Oh, sorry.
So basically he had nothing. Yeah.
So, but when like, I mean, you hear about all these, that's the people much higher up the food chain, right? Like the government leaders at the very top, don't they all have apartments in New York City and stuff that they own, or condos, I guess?
That was later, right?
Oh, that was later.
You mean which government? Yeah, that was later. That was like the people who were in the government in the 90s. Not in the 80s. Yeah.
They couldn't own anything in America then. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't know how to steal. That's the problem. They knew how to steal. Like
they're too idealistic.
Paper. No, not idealistic, but they couldn't imagine it. That's the whole thing. For them, stealing was like, I don't know, if you arrange, using your status, you arrange, like a fresh meat from some, the meatery, whatever, like to come to your family or something.
Right.
Like you would just kind of have something, but they couldn't never imagine they would steal like property, because there was no concept of, like private real estate or anything like this. Yeah. So, yeah.
What did your parents do during when it was a planned economy, or work-wise, was it?
No, well, my parents were born in the 1960s, so they were they were both engineers, and they worked as engineers. That's all, Then when after the Soviet Union collapsed, my mom became a teacher. She just switced to teaching from that, and then my father, he actually formed a small company and kind of became a small business owner.
But did they see positives right after it collapsed, as far as early on, like there was more food on the shelves and all those things?
Yeah, of course. That was a very interesting, like and it's kind of like a personal problem for me, because of how kind of my parents, they kind of changed, like, they did like a U-turn, like many Russians of their age now. Because like in the 90s, of course, they were, them and all of their friends, they were very kind of supporting what was going on and everything. And like they were kind of all saying, oh, Soviet Union, never again, not this shit, obviously, of course. And they were able to travel, and they were able to actually make some money. And I remember my mom used to tell me the story that when she was there was like another like economic crisis in the late 90s, and they were like, a queue of people in the supermarket, because there were like some deficit. Mm-hmm. and she was standing in the queue, and in front of her there was like a couple of older women, and they were kind of nostalgic about the Soviet Union and said, "Oh, we're not going to like look at like how shit everything is. We're gonna vote for Zyuganov, which is like the Communist Party of Russia, like because they had Yeltsin as the democratic one, and there was the communist, and they were kind of always the elections in the 90s were between those two." And they were going, "Oh, I'm going to vote for communists." And my mom said, "Well, like if you vote for communists, then even these products will disappear, like it was before." And the older lady said, "Well, how do they disappear? This guy is taking it from somewhere." So it's kind of taking the products from somewhere. So the communists will also do that, but it's kind of nobody really understood. So these people who are kind of blaming Gorbachev and they didn't understand the concept of how
how the economy actually functions. Yeah.
But then and my parents were always kind of pro this whole thing and voted for Yeltsin and obviously and everything. But then in the last kind of 10, 12 years,
it came back around.
Really difficult.
Make Russia great again.
yeah. And I heard so much kind of nostalgia about like I was kind of talking to my father like a few years ago, and he was like, "Yeah, I mean like the Soviet Union was like the most humane idea for a state." And I was like, "What the fuck?"
Like, you totally forgot all the. It's like it's amazing what the memory does to you when time goes by.
Yeah, pretty much.
What those lines?
What did what did Gorbachev do? What was his role after leaving office? Like the last 20 years of his life?
Well, I think
30 years. Sorry. Was he in the
30 years?
Was he seen on TV in the media? Was he out there much?
Well, for some time, yes. He actually even stood for presidency. It's one of the elections. I think maybe it was in when Putin was elected the first time. I think.
Oh wow.
So he actually first of all he became one of the founders of the new newspaper, the Novaya Gazeta, which is used to be the main kind of free media, the first and the biggest free media.
Was that
and
shut
now
down?
They shut it down. Yeah, and he's still one of the owners. I mean, up until his death, he still had a share like 25% or something like this in this newspaper. I think if I might be mistaken, but he definitely was a shareholder in this. And so he was still kind of in public life, but kind of in the early 90s, I think he was more kind of under the radar. But then like towards the late 90s, he became a member of some kind of party, of some political party. And he kind of even stood for presidency once after this. But since Putin's been president, and of course this was partly because of the age and partly because of just not being relevant anymore, he was just mostly kind of just giving lectures and supporting some kind of political movements and kind of the charity stuff, mostly kind of this whole kind of pro-liberalization democratic thing. But it was of course mutually understood that he would never do something that would be upsetting to the current government, and they wouldn't do something to him, right. Just because it's like the one kind of, if a person was a head of state, that means he's protected for life,
Could he make money? Like our former presidents, they all give speeches for like Exxon and Halliburton and all these companies that pay him like $500,000. I'm sure
Gorbachev must have done that. Right?
They'll give him like $500,000.
I think he was doing a lot of that. I think he made a lot of money in the 90s. He was doing that in the West. He was doing it in America, Europe.
There you go.
Giving lectures.
I know he met my old boss De Niro at an event.
But I thought that the lectures in America, they're kind of a front for really, we just want to pay you this money so that we can get stuff done in power. It's like you come talk to us for 30 minutes, we give you $500,000. Like nobody's that good of a speaker, Well,
don't sell yourself short, Turner.
But yeah,
you're great on mic.
Someday. But
I know what the country clubs pay you.
Why would they pay him? Or maybe it's just like actual universities paid him.
No, it was actual university lectures. Yeah, it wasn't like this sort of lectures.
I don't know if he was getting $500K, but yeah.
I still
wasn't getting Hillary Clinton money.
I think he was still getting kind of more than a regular speaker just because he's like an important historical figure and they were kind of supporting.
But it wasn't a buy-off.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like five. Yeah, there's nothing he could actually do for any of these people. So just kind of, I think he just lived a more or less normal life. And in his recent interviews, he always spoke about like that he would do stuff differently, some stuff if he knew, like if he had the knowledge then. But in general, he kind of always maintained that he did what he was what he was able to, and he's kind of proud of the general direction, like of the general kind of idea of what he was doing, even though he says like, oh, some of the things that obviously I would do differently.
Can I tell you?
Wait, can I ask you? Did you meet him with De Niro or not?
I didn't meet him. I just had a picture I saw. But I wanted to tell you, I looked it up. I just Googled this. And the first speaking fee I saw in 1998, he was paid $150,000 to speak somewhere.
Whoa!
You'll never guess who it was for. You want to take one guess? Or what do you think the organization? It's an organization. It's like an NGO. It's like a charity.
NAACP.
No, that'd be better even, but it was the Women's International Zionist Organization fundraiser in Miami. So there was a dispute where he was saying 25,000, but this newspaper says $150,000. So yeah, wow. Look at that.
Zionists. Oh, like do you know Zionists?
Of course he knows
what's that?
Zionist. You know what a Zionist is?
Yeah. Of course,
he's in Russia.
Oh, okay. They know. I don't know. He's thinking of immigrating to Israel. If you need a country to go to, I can vouch for you. I'll say you're. He's already in Germany. Jewish. What do you mean? I know, but if something goes wrong, I don't know. Oh, okay, sounds good. That's it, everybody. I think we're out of time. That's the podcast. Oleg, thanks so much for doing it, man. East West Comedy Club, everybody, check it out in Berlin. Kaplan, we might have to go over there and do a show.
I think that sounds like an excellent idea.
Now that
East versus West.
Now that we're allowed to travel again,
we'll put the wall back up and we'll knock it down and we'll have.
That'd be a good idea.
good.
We'll do it for like a YouTube video.
There you go. There's don't steal that.
Rebuild the wall and then knock it down. That's it. Yeah. Oleg, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Always great to be here. If there's going to be any more terrible events coming from Russia, which there will be.
I have a feeling. On me I'm not a betting man. I don't have a time machine, but I have a feeling there might be. Hate to tell you.
Time machine. So that's it. Kaplan, that's the podcast. What should we do?
On that note, the Germans don't have a word for this, but get lost.
Oh, get lost and download my album on iTunes. The link is in the comments. All right, get lost.